So the story is, having not only survived the Hunger Games, but also managed to get Peeta out by sort of feigning affection for him, effectively, or did she? Oh, well, no, but that's raised in the first one. So Katniss Everdeen is now back, attempting to keep her head down, and of course, what happens is that President Snow realizes that the public's hearts were won by the apparent love affair of these two young heroes. He kind of understands that what she's done is she's outfoxed the game. She's not only won the game, but she's sort of somehow managed to beat it in a kind of philosophical way. So he's organising a quarter quell, which is basically this thing which they're meant to have once every 25 years. And the idea is that they're going to do something super nasty. And this time, the super nasty thing that they're going to do is they're going to get back the champions from previous games and get them to fight each other. Meanwhile, Katniss is dealing, although this is very much a sort of side issue, dealing with whether or not she is genuinely in love with Gale and whether that is more important than all the horror that's going on around her. Here's a clip.
You haven't hurt people, Katniss. You've given them an opportunity. They just have to be brave enough to take it.
We have to go, Gale, before they kill us. They will kill us.
What about the other families? Huh? The ones who stay. What happens to them? People are looking at you, Katniss.
I don't want anyone looking to me. I can't help them.
You do what you want. I'm staying here.
It's a very short clip.
Yeah.
What?
No, I wanted some. There was no jeopardy or peril there.
No, I know. But I think that was
relationship stuff.
I think that was the only clip we were given. It's interesting that they should have given us a clip, because one of the interesting things about Hunger Games is that there is. I mean, you have to see the Hunger Games, as a post-Twilight movie thing. So the whole thing is Twilight makes these movies which are appealing, to the great big teen fantasy franchise that isn't performing solely to the boys' own audience, and does incredibly well. And as a result of that, that's why Hunger Games is now happening. And so whatever anybody thinks of Twilight, Twilight does have a role in Hunger Games now being the huge cinematic success that it is, and there's a reason why you get the quotes from Stephanie Meyer all over the front cover of the Suzanne Collins novels. I mean, Katniss Everdeen I think is absolutely great heroine, and I think she's brilliantly played by Jennifer Lawrence, who is such a terrific screen presence, and also seems to be just in her in her general demeanour such an all-round good thing that it's really, really hard not to get behind the Hunger Games and say, it's terrific, whatever the flaws may be. So in the case of this, there is a love triangle in inverted commas going in the background, which was, of course, the thing that was originally, used to sort of sell it to the Twilight audience. But it's very, very sidelined. I mean, actually, the moping that's done is done by the boys. Peeta, who actually really wants
He is a moper.
He is a moper,
and
yes.
Looks like Alec Jones, which I find slightly distracting.
Okay. Yes, if they cast Alec Jones in that role, it wouldn't have worked as well. So on the one hand, you have him doing, he loves Katniss, and he wants there to be something more real. On the other hand, you have Gale, who doesn't appear to do anything at all, actually, apart from stand around and look smouldering. But her character's attitude is, okay, you know what? There's other things going on. And the other things that are going on is all this other really, really bad apocalyptic stuff. So they're then sent back into this Quarter Quell Games. So the interesting thing is that obviously because it's returning champions, the really controversial subject matter of the first one, which was children fighting children, kids killing kids, which you had talked about even before the BBFC saw the film. I remember you saying, this is going to be so difficult. How are the BBFC going to deal with this? And I think they dealt with it very well.
Because it had to be a 12, basically.
Yes, exactly. It had to be a 12, but it had to deal. And certainly there's that scene at the very beginning of the first set of Hunger Games when they run towards the cornucopia, in which suddenly people get killed, and it's really horrible. And there was a certain amount of trimming to get it into 12, but that was pretty much all it was. In the case of this, obviously the contestants by nature are older, because we're talking about returning contestants. So the children fighting children thing is sidelined, and actually some of the contestants in this are they're our age.
Yeah, some of them are pensioners.
Yes, exactly. So exactly, yeah. Genuinely. So you get a very sort of different take on all that. So what it means is that whereas the first film owed a very great debt to Battle Royale, This is much more in the mold of something like Rollerball, which is, a dystopian future fantasy in which there are these gladiatorial games that are essentially used to oppress the masses. It's much more about what the games mean to everybody else. At the very beginning, President Snow says to Katniss, I'm onto you, and you have to keep up this pretense, and you have to pretend that you're in love because the public are on your side now. And all the way through the film, there's a lot of discussions about the fact that she's become something that's bigger than the games. She has transcended the games, and therefore she's dangerous, and therefore she needs to be beaten. And that is really something which is a riff in the middle of Rollerball. But you've seen Rollerball.
I have not seen Rollerball.
Okay, but it's a very similar thing that James Caan's Jonathan E. becomes bigger than the games itself, and therefore they have to get rid of him. And I do find that idea, it's a fairly well-worn science fiction idea, but I do find it interesting, the idea that you create a game essentially to oppress people, and then what happens is that somebody rises up through them and then becomes a symbol of something else. So all the way through the film, the emphasis is much more on that. The emphasis is much more on totalitarian state, individually downtrodden places starting to rise up, and Katniss Everdeen is the sort of the symbol, the kind of the well, not Joan of Arc, but she is the kind of there is a Joan of Arc thing, is there? She's the symbol, behind which they are all starting to throw off the shackles of oppression. You also have Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's this kind of games designer who you yourself said is notable because he appears to be the only one who said, I'm not doing the costume.
It must have been in his contract.
Dress Down Sunday.
Yeah, for him, not for anyone else.
No.
It makes him look a freak.
But it's interesting, and of course his character has an interesting trajectory during the course of the movie. You get Stanley Tucci with the very frightening teeth. I mean, I still think that Stanley Tucci role as the game show presenter is one of the creepiest things about Hunger Games. He is great, but he's turned
it up a notch as well for this.
He has, and in a way that's genuinely quite scary. I mean, it reminds me of something like Shock Treatment, the Richard O'Brien non-sequel to Rocky Horror, that idea, which very much sort of prefigured reality television and that sort of leering grin of reality television. When you first see Stanley Tucci, and he's got that wall-to-wall white false teeth, and he's doing exactly that, ha 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 ha. It's like the Joker. I mean, there is an element of the Joker in that, and I think there's something really creepy about his character. And interviewing these people, it's lovely to have you here, and so sad to lose you. In an absolute sense, that you are about to have to go off and take part in these exterminating games. If I have any criticism at all, it's partly that there is inevitably an element of repetition involved here because, it's the second set of Hunger Games. And I do wonder whether it'd be interesting to see what happens with the third book. Again, if you split something into two, which is now the standard thing, it means a fairly little narrative has to go an awfully long way. So we wait to see what happens. So there is an element of repetition, but it's... there's a different spin on it this time. It's also, the film is long. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It is long. I think for some people, it may perhaps be overlong. I still stand by that. There's a reason why really, really good movies tend to kind of attempt to lock in around the 2 hours. There is, tautness of storytelling is good. You kind of get the sense here they didn't want to leave anything out. They wanted to cram absolutely everything in. So there is an awful lot of stuff, and I think it could have come down a little bit, but that's, hey. But beyond that, I think she's terrific. I think she's really, really good in that role. I think the incidental characters, Elizabeth Banks, actually, her character is very interesting this time because she starts to come out from under the wig and start to...
Just explain who she is.
Well, she's Effie Trinket, isn't she? So she's the designer with the kind of, who in the first film, at the beginning of this, is the absolute epitome of the vacuous awfulness of the rich, overprivileged who see this whole thing as a glamour show, not as some horrible meat market. And then Woody Harrelson.
So saving Elizabeth Banks, really.
Here all week.
I've got to contribute some way.
Try the veal, tip your waitress. So I liked it very much. As I said, I think it is slightly long, slightly overly baggy. I think the comparison for me is Rollerball, whereas before the comparison was Battle Royale. But I think Jennifer Lawrence is terrific. And I just, the only thing I'd say about it is, people sometimes say, well, how great that we have this rather than Twilight, because she's out there and she's been... Twilight was part of the road to get here. That's all I think.